and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer, because change begins with me.
Oh boy, what in talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
President Buhari proceeds on 10-day vacation, leaves for the United Kingdom.
Defense Minister justifies presence of Nigerian troops in Senegal as Senate questions rationale behind the action without approval of the National Assembly.
Well and truly.
On the foreign scene, Adama Barrow sworn in as Gambian president in Senegal.
The office of the President of the Republic of the Gambia.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we will discuss the Trump presidency in the U.S.
All right, now it all began, like a fairy tale, but in a matter of hours, Mr. Donald Trump will formally assume office as the 45th President of the United States. And this is a little over 10 weeks after stunning the U.S. and the rest of the world by winning the U.S. presidential election.
Oh yes, Kingsley, it will be one moment many never expected would happen, not because it was not possible, but because the personality involved never caught a picture of a leader the great America envisions.
Now, from his campaign rhetoric to, of course, his tirade even after winning the elections, Mr. Trump has provoked a number of reactions from the U.S. and elsewhere in the world about how he intends to govern from what is arguably the most powerful political office in the world. But of course, Donald Trump has been elected, and as we said, in a matter of hours, he will take the oath of office.
Now, Trump's controversial stand on many issues have, however, put the world on the edge as he takes over from Obama. Already, he has had disagreements with some of America's institutions, described NATO as obsolete, and threatened some corporate organizations with high tariffs if they build products in neighboring countries and importing them instead of building them in America.
And Kirian, that's not to forget the telephone call to the Taiwanese president, which of course generated tension and still ongoing between Mr. Trump and China, that's mainland China, put into question the U.S. position on the one China policy under the Trump administration.
Well, that's right, Kingsley. China seems not to be taking any chances with Trump's utterances and actions. As for the first time, a Chinese president attended the World Economic Forum in Davos, where Xi Jinping defended globalization, which analysts see as a pointed rebuke to Trump's attacks on free trade.
All right, whatever the situation is, Mr. Donald Trump will assume office later today as the 45th president of the United States. Now, as he takes the oath of office, there are, of course, concerns and questions about what will happen to not just the U.S., but also to the rest of the world in terms of the implications of his policy direction as well as various actions. And going by his remarks about Nigeria, where does that also place our relations? In other words, U.S.-Nigeria relations. What are the alternatives available? Will Mr. Trump walk the talk of his campaign messages, or with the American establishment check his isolatory propositions? These are some of the issues that experts will be analyzing as we discuss the Trump presidency on Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of the program, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority.
And I am Kirian Umayo, joining Kingsley to welcome you. In the course of the program, we shall bring to you our companion segments, which include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. We are kick-starting with the main news, and Lydia Bassi is here to tell us what is in the news. Hello, Lydia.
Hello, Kirian. Good to see you. Good morning, and welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has left Abuja for London, the British capital, on leave as part of his annual vacation. Before his departure, President Muhammadu Buhari had a closed-door meeting with military chiefs.
The meeting was to give Mr. President updates on our operations within and outside the country, especially our involvement in ECOWAS Standby Force that is being inducted into the Senegal, so that in issue of their mandate for ensuring that the president-elect of the Gambia is sworn in.
What is the operational mandate in Gambia, sir?
The operational mandate in Gambia is in line with the decision of the heads of government, head of state and government of the ECOWAS region. Decided that the ECOWAS Standby Force should be put in place to ensure that the decision of the people of the Gambia is respected.
They didn't give any further directives to you?
To me, as the head of the military, is to ensure that everything is in order, that's all. And to make sure that the situation is handled appropriately.
Thursday, Senate plenary commenced with acknowledgement of receipt of President Muhammadu Buhari's vacation letter. Senate President Bukola Saraki read the letter in which it stated that Vice President Yemi Osinbajo will be acting during the 10-day President Buhari is on working vacation.
I wish to inform the distinguished Senate that I will be away on a 10-working day short vacation as part of my 2017 annual leave from Monday the 23rd of January to Monday the 6th of February 2017. And while I'm away, the Vice President will perform the functions of my office. Please accept, distinguished Senate President, the assurances of my highest consideration. Yours sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari.
The House of Representatives has passed for second reading a bill for an act to make it mandatory for local government ministries, departments, and agencies to give priority to local manufacturers in the procurement of goods and services. The House also received a communication from President Muhammadu Buhari notifying the legislature of his intention to commence a 10-day working vacation from Monday, 23rd of January to Monday, 6th of February as part of his 2017 annual leave. And now, Gambia's Adama Barrow has been sworn in at the Gambian embassy in Dakar, Senegal. The swearing-in ceremony had the attendance of some African leaders, diplomats, and representatives from different international organizations.
I, Adama Barrow,
do swear
that I will well and truly
execute the functions of the office
execute the function of the office
of the President of the Republic
of the office of the President of the Republic of the Gambia,
that I will preserve and defend the Constitution,
that I will preserve and defend the Constitution,
and that I will do right
then I will do right
to all manner of people
to all manner of people
according to law,
according to law,
without fear or favor,
without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
The Senate is not comfortable with the deployment of Nigerian troops to the Gambia without legislature approval. The protest followed a point of order raised at the Thursday's plenary.
A president shall not declare a state of war between the Federation and another country, except with the sanction of a resolution of the both houses of the National Assembly sitting in a joint session.
The Nigerian military has sent its contingent as part of the ECOWAS standby force for deployment in the Gambia. A statement from the Ministry of Defense signed by Brigadier General Mohammed Sani Ahmed says the aim is to implement the decision of ECOWAS leaders in upholding the result of the presidential election of December 1, 2017. The statement adds that the development is due to failed efforts to resolve the political impasse there, with Yahya Jammeh refusing to relinquish power. Leadership of the Alumni Association of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies has commended the leadership role of the Nigerian government within the West African sub-region to enthrone good governance and democracy. The president of the association, Major General Lawrence Onoja, says the institute was conceived and developed to serve as the nation's foremost policy institute for national development.
And with particular reference to what is happening in Gambia now, the president has taken the bull by the horn. He's called meetings severally. He's gone there to talk to, made personal contact with Yahya Jammeh. And we are hoping that his trips, his efforts that Nigeria is making will yield dividends by ensuring that democracy is effected in the place and that Yahya Jammeh lives according to the verdicts of his people.
As countdown to June final switch over from analog to digital television begins, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed says there's the urgent need to institutionalize a regular meeting of interest groups to keep track on the process. It was at a meeting with members of the broadcasting organizations of Nigeria.
It's important that all the stakeholders will sit down. If we want to get there, and we want digital dividend for all of us, there must be give and take. There must be understanding.
What happens to all our transmitters? Since we're going to be abandoning this equipment.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kirian after this break. Good morning.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Make I come see now how they no go make me president of our club association. In fact, we no go even need to do election sef. Now so just dash me the president when they come see as my level don't change. In fact, I don't get my presidential waka. President.
Promo runs till end of January 2017. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Can you believe it, guys? All this top-notch furniture, It's made in Nigeria. I said made in Nigeria. How do I look, guys?
Made in Nigeria.
Made in Nigeria.
Come to Made in Nigeria TV Expo and Exhibition 2016, where Nigerian manufacturers and producers meet buyers and also showcase your products to over 150 million Nigerians and the global audience online.
So many other products are produced here on a daily basis.
Booking and hotel reservation. Call 080-6422-1412 and 070-3768-1520. Call now, guys.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now it's time for us to take a look at some business stories. And the headlines we have there include the following: that the Nigerian youth have been advised to approach agriculture as a business venture and not a labor-intensive occupation. Plus, Budget and Planning Minister says end in sight to recession. Let's join Kolo Mohammed, our correspondent, for details of the stories.
The Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma Uto Udoma, has said that an end to Nigeria's current economic recession is in sight. This was when the minister received in audience the National Institute of Quantity Surveyors.
So what we want from you is further ideas that we could incorporate into what we are doing, because we need to reach out to everybody, get all the ideas.
The minister explained further that government is prioritizing infrastructural development as evidenced in the 2017 budgetary allocations, especially for road construction, airports rehabilitation, as well as power and rail infrastructure.
The 2017 budget, captioned Budget of Recovery and Growth, is strategically designed to take the economy out of recession to a path of growth and prosperity.
Given the background of the current economic situation, the minister said the collapse of the oil prices in the international market and disruption in Nigeria's crude production resulted in the country slipping into recession. Udoma, however, said that Nigerian government has developed a recovery and growth plan aimed at getting the country out of recession. This, he explained, is in addition to the wide-range consultations the ministry undertook with governors of the 36 states of the Federation, the National Assembly, private sector, and the international community. And still on the economy, youths have been enjoined to see agriculture as a business venture, not a rigorous farm work that is crude and labor-intensive. A civil society player in the agri sector who said this to Business News emphasized that agribusiness is fundamental to Nigeria's economic development and the potential can only be harnessed through a value chain approach.
You know, that agriculture begins with, the production. As this person produce, then this other person, is doing the processing and the packaging, and then the next person is doing the marketing, then to the consumers. Now, when you now unbundle these steps, you now just see that everybody is involved in the game. Whether you are a local farmer, whether you are a first-class product, you are involved. So that is the value chain system that we need to introduce.
And that has been Business News segment. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Kolo. And next on Good Morning Nigeria is a newspaper review. All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoebi, is in the studio as usual. You are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, Bayo.
Thank you very much, Kylian. It's nice to see you again. What a long time. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo Atuebi, thank you for being with us today. Let's begin our review this morning with the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper, below its nameplate, there are two headlines there before the lead story. Gambia, that's the kicker. Barrow sworn in as new president. Details of the story on page 8. And then we also have the other headline, Buhari proceeds on medical vacation. Details of that story can also be found on page 3. But the lead story says, with a kicker, towards a resilient Nigerian economy. Adeosun, that's finance minister, capital projects are key. Peterside, that's Atedo Peterside, chairman of one of the banks. 11 things government isn't doing. Now, this, of course, these statements were made at the Daily Trust lecture, which took place yesterday in Abuja. Now, below the photograph on the front page there, you have a window of 3 headlines. Presidency, why ex-Zakzaki can't be released. And Hajj, Saudi Arabia restores Nigeria's 95,000 quota. Electricity supply drops to 1,973 megawatts. Details of that story can be found on page 13. Carry on.
All right, I have here the blueprint, and the main story here this morning is Magus non-confirmation grounds EFCC. We all know about the story of the acting head of EFCC, who is yet to be confirmed, and they said that has grounded the establishment. And we are working, says a spokesman. And now below the picture on the front page, we also have some stories here. Buhari proceeds on a 10-day leave, or Oshibajo takes over. We've also had that in the news. And then release funds to courts. Judges and reps tell Buhari. More on that, NMPC to Nigerians, no plan to increase fuel price. That can be read on page 15 of the blueprint. We also have Saudi increases Nigeria's Hajj seats to 95,000. The story is on page 8 of the blueprint.
All right, Bayo, let's get a comment
Thank
on
you
these
very
stories.
much. Well, the Republic of Gambia has a new president. He is, of course, President Adama Barrow. The last bid by President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz of Mauritania to persuade Yahya Jammeh to quit failed. Meanwhile, there are conflicting reports about how the oath was administered on President Adama Barrow. Some people report that the commissioner of oath at the Gambian embassy administered the oath. Others report that the president of the Gambian Bar Association, Sheriff Tambadu, was the one that administered the oath. Meanwhile, Botswana was the first country to recognize Adama Barrow as the president of the Gambia. Also yesterday, former Vice President Yahya Jammeh, Isatu Njie Sedi, also called it quits and immediately fled the country with his wife and children. The United Nations Security Council, by Resolution 2337 of 2017 yesterday, by consensus of 15 members, has affirmed Adama Barrow now the legitimate president of the Gambia. The president of the Security Council, Olof Suk of Sweden, announced, I just made a call to the Gambian President Adama Barrow to tell him that the Security Council is behind him and will support him as the president. Meanwhile, leadership newspaper seems to report that President Yahya Jammeh may have succumbed and gone into exile. Details of that are very sketchy. Others say his wife and children have left Gambia. There are also information that the troops, particularly Senegal troops, are already in Gambia. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Air Force is providing air surveillance over Gambia. The President Adama Barrow of Gambia has ordered all Gambian soldiers to remain in their barracks. He warned those found to be illegally bearing arms will be treated as rebels. Talking about the vacation of Mr. President, there are conflicting reports. Some papers are reporting medical vacation. It is wrong. The president's vacation, in the letter he wrote to the National Assembly, is commencing on 23rd of January to February 6th, which means that today is 20th. Between now and 23rd, the president is still working, and that was why his letter was described as a working vacation. And while he is away, he also will conduct some medical tests. The letter was conveyed to the National Assembly and is in compliance with Section 145 of the Constitution. He was asked about his vacation, and he said, what is wrong with going on vacation? Didn't I go last year about the same time? Last year he went on vacation on February 5th, and it was to last to 10, but he had an extension of some few days.
All right, now let's take a look at the headlines on the front page also of the Guardian newspaper. We earlier took Daily Trust as well as the other paper taken by my colleague, Kirian, before Bayo made his comments. Now let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. Now you can see there, it says the Gambia's new president takes oath of office in Senegal. And then you have a number of riders to that particular story. Buhari begins 10-day working vacation, hands over to Oshibajo. Now those are the two headlines that we can immediately see on the screen. If we can see the lead story. Federal government denies increase in fuel price. That's the double-decker headline for the lead story. And marketers shun import of petroleum products. That's one of the riders there from the headline of The Guardian. Also there, from what you can see, it says reps probe alleged theft of CBN's 100 billion naira fund to build ranches. Now those are the front pages we are taking from The Guardian in the meantime.
All right, now here is the New Telegraph for today, and the main news, the major news on the front page is about the bombing of IDPs. Mothers, children buried in same grave, says survival. The Radar Air Force constitutes inquiry board. PDP can back probe. And just below the picture in the front page, nothing wrong going on vacation, says the president, as he travels to UK for a medical checkup. So says New Telegraph this morning. There are so many stories here. Just above the headline, you have Yoruba leaders lament worsening economic corruption. Gambia, UN-backed Barrow swearing in. Why we won't release El Zazaki, that's the presidency. That story is on page 6. And then woman sells knees for 350,000 naira. Very important story there. Woman sells knees for 350,000 naira. That's on page 9 of New Telegraph. Maybe Bayo would like to make comments on this.
Yes. Which one specifically you want me to make comment about?
Well, any of them, but I'm particularly concerned about the woman that sells knees for 350,000.
Well, he has been arrested and he's giving justification for it, but it is a crime to sell a person, and therefore is going to explain in the court of law. But meanwhile, there are other stories. Particularly, you recall that the conveners of Bring Back Our Girls were part of the tour to Sambisa Forest, and they have now made public some of their observations. And they said the briefing that briefing has revealed to them that there were negotiations going on for 83 other girls. They saw a highly motivated, highly professional, very dedicated and inspiring air troops, many of whom are in the ages of the 20. They also were able to recognize that Camp Zero is only about 2 square kilometers and has been totally destroyed. However, Sambisa Forest is hundreds of square kilometers, and that is where soldiers are still there, combing the place. They also had made some observations. They say before now, there was only 1 fighter jet, but recently 4 more has been added. They also indicated delay had been costly. If resources, leadership, knowledge, expertise, equipment, and intelligence have been deployed earlier on, they will probably would have saved the girls for this long sojourning now. They also made the recommendations. They said governments must envelop its attitude of citizens demanding accountability. They must embrace a culture of continually being answerable to the citizen. Finally, they say government must be less antagonist to those who scrutinize the activities and also demand accountability of them. The 83 girls are still not accounted for, and they've been away now for 1,011 days. The other story is the concern expressed by the House of Reps, and they have appealed to the presidency to tell the agencies concerned to release funds to the National Judicial Council. You may recall that some papers have even reported that judges have not been paid for over 4 months now, and they have raised concern that this is undermining the principle of separation of powers.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. Let's take a look now at some of the headlines also on the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper. All right, well, Daily Sun is indicating there with the earpiece that Buhari goes on 18-day vacation for medical checkup in the UK. Bayo, you already addressed that issue. But the writer says Oshibaja calls short trip to Davos. Now, the lead story for Daily Sun says Yahya Jammeh goes into hiding. That's a double-decker headline. Of course, it has a kicker saying as Nigerian planes hover and Senegalese soldiers storm Gambia, Yahya Jammeh goes into hiding. And two riders, Barrow sworn in as president at embassy in Senegal, and UN backs ECOWAS on use of force. Now you have the photograph there, Barrow to the left, and then incoming US President Donald Trump to the right. Now, Air Force probes bombing of IDP camps. Bayo has also addressed that. Nnamdi Kanu, that's the kicker. Ohaneze seeks political solution. Details of the story can be found inside. D-Day for Donald Trump. U.S. in world focus as 45th president assumes office. Now, the strip headline at the foot of the front page says, Akpabio kicks as Akwa Ibom senator defects to APC. Details of that story can be found on page 13. Bayo.
Yes, the 8-year tenure of Barack Hussein Obama comes to an end. This brings to an end the Kenyan Kansas Obama mania, the first black president of the United States. Donald Trump is to be sworn in as the 45th president of the United States. He arrived Washington Thursday for an inauguration that has been described as the most expensive. It is to cost the taxpayers of America $200 million. The 70-year-old Trump, who is an estate magnate that has no experience in military or governance before, says that the journey begins and I will be working and fighting very hard to make a great journey for the American people. Mike Pence is the vice president. He was a former governor of Indiana. And Melania Trump will be the first lady. Accordingly, he will be sworn in on the steps of the Capitol Hill about noon Washington time, which is about 6 p.m. Nigerian time. Trump supporters and anti-Trump protesters have all gathered in Washington for this quadrennial democratic celebration.
All right, Bayo, that's the much, of course, that we can take for the papers and the headlines on the front pages for today. We'd like to thank you for being with us today, indeed, for the week. We hope you have a nice weekend and see you on Monday.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we will, of course, be going over to Davos, that's in Switzerland, to speak to Nigeria's Minister in charge of Industry, Trade and Investment.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Make a come see now how they no go make. In fact, we no go even need to do election sef. Now so just dash me the president when they come see as my level don't change. In fact, I don't get my presidential waka. President.
Promo runs till end of January 2017. Airtel, the smartphone network.
With Free Basics, one opportunity leads to many. Dial *141# to get Jobberman, Airtel One Touch, and many more without data charges. Only on Airtel.
All right, you're welcome back. And just as we indicated before that short break, we're going over to Davos in Switzerland, where we are being joined via Skype by Nigeria's Minister in charge of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Okechukwu Inelama. You can see him right there on the right side of the split screen. Honorable Minister, a pleasure to have you join us via Skype from Davos.
Thank you for having me.
All right, very quickly, I mean, the Davos meeting this year is taking place against the background of a number of developments around the world. First, you had Brexit, and then you also had the surprise election of Mr. Donald Trump, who is taking over as the 45th president of the U.S. today, plus the fact that, of course, a number of economies are expressing some challenges, and those economies include that of Nigeria, which is in recession, although the signs are hopeful that it might be out of recession going forward. From your participation at the meetings taking place in Davos, what have been the major milestones or takeaways for our country, Nigeria?
Thank you. First, let me say that, as you know, this is a meeting that happens every year, and you are right to say that this year is particularly significant because several things are going on at the same time. In fact, as you know, Donald Trump will become U.S. president today, and you mentioned some of the other key things going on around the world. And I think Davos is paying attention. There is quite a number of people here from various governments around the world, from the private sector and from civil society. And I can say for one that trade has loomed very large and has been a very significant discussion. And I think the overwhelming consensus is that the world still needs trade, and trade can still be used for development. And from the point of view of Nigeria, we are clearly paying attention and we're engaged. As you know, we're very focused on how to use trade as a means for industrialization, both to attract investments and for industrialization. We're also interested in attracting the right sort of partners who will take a long-term view to a partnership with the country. I'm also happy to report that many of our own Nigerian corporate leaders are here and engaging, and we met with several other of the players already present in Nigeria who are willing to increase their investment in the country. So overall, I would say the mission has been very successful.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Now, Nigeria has participated in such a fora several times in the past, and many Nigerians are yet to see the dividends of such participation in a world forum of this status. Now, the Vice President Oshibajo talked much about the involvement of the private sector against the backdrop of diversification program of the present administration. Now, Kingsley did ask you about what Nigeria is taking away from Davos. Now, realistically speaking, are we really nailing things down to specifics, things that we believe that after this forum, that Nigeria is going to directly benefit, especially with respect to our private sector partnership with Nigeria?
Thank you. Let me say first, I think I understand your question around the Vice President's point on the need for diversification and to work with the private sector to do so, and how that links into the work that has been going on in Davos. We had a session on Nigeria. There was a particular very successful interactive session that was focused on Nigeria. There we had many of the leading business people from Nigeria, international players active in Nigeria, and those that are wishing to come to Nigeria. And one of the key things we took away from that meeting is the very point you made, that we need the private sector to lead the drive towards diversification. When we talk about, let me use the ministry I see as an example, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. When we talk about industry, trade and investment, it's the private sector that will lead the industrialization, that will lead the trade, that will lead the investment. And one of the things we said was that as a government, we want to be an enabler, which is why we're very focused on enabling environment, and a lot of work has gone on that. In fact, we reached some decision with some of the private sector players on even how to sell brand Nigeria, because there was a consensus that we haven't done enough of talking about the opportunities in Nigeria in a positive light. I mean, we know we have our issues, but it's also important to realize that Nigeria has significant opportunities are properly focused upon, can bring a lot of good results. So we do intend to work actively with the private sector this year and going forward. And in fact, the plan, the Nigeria Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which you've been airing and talking about, also focuses primarily on partnering with the private sector for development, for growth, and for diversification.
All right, Mr. Nalama, thank you very much. I just wanted also to again seek to have a global view of the transactions at Davos, again against the background of what we are saying. Assuming Mr. Donald Trump, as new president of the United States, decides to proceed with some of the rhetoric that he's been credited with, and plus Brexit, that's to say the UK is exiting the European Union. There are all kinds of issues pertaining to the economic relations between them. Add to that the fact that the Chinese president, according to reports, would appear to have stolen the limelight, being a champion of globalization. Are there opportunities that Nigeria is seeing in all of these developments, from the U.S. economic policy or trade policy to occurrences in Brexit, plus the fact that China would appear now to be weighing in as the greatest champion of globalization, rather than isolationism and protectionism, such as we have heard from Mr. Donald Trump?
Thank you. Yes, you're right that the Chinese President Xi did a fantastic job in Davos of telling the story of the need for continuing with the open borders, globalization, and trying to create a better world for all. I think one of the observations I'll make as it relates to Nigeria, as you know, we're already very engaged with China, and people consider it sound policy to engage China, because China clearly has shown a real interest in working with Africa and Nigeria in particular to achieve our goals. So that's the first point. So we clearly support the view of the Chinese president. As it relates to your point on the US obviously isn't going away. In fact, there's a point of view that holds that that what you said about the US president that will elect, that will become president today, is rhetoric, in the sense that the reality will eventually necessarily be different for a variety of reasons that we can't cover this morning. But let me say that whatever happens, Nigeria will stay engaged with the United States. We consider them an important partner. And this was also the views I had expressed around Davos, that the US isn't going away and will continue to be an important partner to the rest of the world. And I believe that ultimately the US will do the right thing. Concerning our relationship with the UK, it's one we are working on. I think we've had historic ties with the UK, and they've reached out to us, and we will continue to work with them in the post-Brexit world, both in terms of bilateral trade agreements, as well as continuing to build on the historic ties we've had with them for many, many years.
All right, Honorable Minister, let me ask you this question. The issue of power is very crucial in the process of diversification of the nation's economy. And we all know that the major challenge of development in this country is power. Now, you are in Davos, and you have, of course, had discussions with various interest groups, in Switzerland. Now, is there any focus on how Nigeria can attract individuals or corporate bodies who will assist the country in the power sector, which of course should be an energizer for other sectors of national economy? Is there any plans that you had towards that direction as you stay in Davos?
Absolutely. I think first, you're very correct to say power is critical, mission critical for the achievement of our economic goals, notably industrialization. And the way to think about it is as very directly linked to the discussion we had earlier on participating or partnering with the private sector. I like the way you've linked it to Davos as well. The point I will make is that we need to attract more and more investments into power. And I would say those investments increasingly need to come from the private sector. So the public-private partnership arrangements we're looking at, the whole idea of bringing in other investors into infrastructure in general and power in particular, is a very good one. Many of the investors around the world are looking at Nigeria as a key destination, particularly infrastructure investors. We just have to set the right framework. And I'm confident that will attract increasing investments into power and also into industry in general. I met with several of the leading industrialists who are already active in Nigeria and who are also looking to come to Nigeria. And many of them are looking to increase their investments in the country. Obviously, like I said, power needs a lot of attention.
All right. The Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment would like to thank you, but maybe just before we sign it off, very briefly, because you've expressed some positive sentiments now about investor reaction to investment opportunities in Nigeria. If you recall, and Nigerians do know this, 2015, after the new administration came in, investor sentiment tended to worry about the exchange rate policy. Now we have a new exchange rate policy, plus the fact that your ministry and others have also been working on ease of doing business. What now are the sentiments you are picking up from potential investors with regard to these two major steps and others been taken already by the government?
Absolutely, you're spot on. I think those 2 points you made, or those 2 issues you raised, dealing with the exchange rate, issues around the exchange rate, as well as the ease of doing business and creating the right enabling environment, I would say are the top 2 areas of interest for investors. And we are wise to focus on addressing both. And I like your point that now that we're addressing both, that we hope we'll see better investor reaction. My sense from Davos and from my meetings around the world is that we will see better reaction in 2017. They do expect us to implement the foreign exchange policy we've announced in a way that is that will build confidence, market confidence, and of course the ease of doing business. They expect to start seeing the yielding results, and we're aligned that we expect exactly the same thing. So I think we hope we'll see much better results in 2017. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Okechukwu Nalama, who has been speaking to us from Davos, Switzerland. Thank you once again for being part of Good Morning Nigeria for today. Now, if you're just joining us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, your breakfast show on the largest TV network in Africa. Now, to set the stage for our discussion on the Trump presidency on Good Morning Nigeria today, Oyeyemi Ajayi has this background report.
January 20, 2017 is another historic day in the United States as Republican Donald Trump assumes office not only as the 45th President of America, but also the oldest to be sworn in the Oval Office. That is not all. He is also the first American president that has neither government nor military experience to be elected as America's president. The baton of leadership changes from one political party to another as Democrats Barack Obama, who has ruled for 8 years, hands over to the Republican Donald Trump. Controversial Trump has had his ideas and policies quite different from the elite political class in the United States, virtues that has made him stand out rather alone amongst the political gladiators right from the beginning. No wonder his victory at the 2016 presidential election took the world by surprise. The immediate effect of his election victory was felt when the dollar crashed in value, and that has continued to have ripple effects on world economies. Officially becoming the president this day, just like every other elected leader, Trump is expected to commence fulfilling his campaign promises, which has a wide range of implications to the countries of the world. Analysts say things will not be the same with some U.S. allies, especially Africa, as he has earlier said that his government will only venture into relations that will benefit America alone, as these form the Make America Great Again campaign message, a stand that those who know say will definitely affect humanitarian and international aid, especially those that depend on such from the United States. Donald Trump has said most aid given to African leaders are used to enrich themselves rather than using them for what they are meant for, a assertion that many others agree with. There is the fear that more strict immigration process and regime will be introduced under Trump. Foreigners will have to go through rigorous tasks before being allowed into the United States, while he also said Muslims and those illegally staying in the United States should be deported. This might lead to mass return of Africans. If Trump goes ahead with his plans for migrants, this influx will present an opportunity for Africa, especially Nigeria, to harness such talents. Others are quick to advise Nigerian government to build an active campaign and create the environment to encourage such Nigerians to come back home and put skills and experiences to bear. The U.S. Unilateral Trade Preference Scheme for Africa, referred to as the African Growth and Opportunity Act (AGOA), which has been extended to 2025, will not likely receive much attention from Donald Trump. Analysts say, rather, he will focus on his anti-trade rhetoric and other publicly contentious issues such as China, Trump's isolationist stance, free trade agreement NAFTA, will make Americans to be perceived as racists. Apart from economy, Donald Trump has openly spoken against the Paris Agreement on climate change, saying alternative sources of power should be embraced. All these open a window of opportunity for Nigeria to truly exploit its potential in coal as a power source. It is clear that many of the American-led multilateral institutions like the World Bank and the IMF, whom Nigeria is injuring some of our plans to borrow and fund its budget, may no longer be a reliable option. This is even more precarious considering Trump's mantra of everyone paying their fair share, which may probably mean reduced American financial contributions to these bodies. The hope is that the possible windfall from the predicted oil price increase will make up for its source of funding that may be closed.
All right, Emi Ajayi, would like to thank you very much there for that background report. Now we have guests with us here in the studios, 3 of them. First, would like to welcome Ambassador Akin Fayami, of course, a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria as part of his tour of duty. While he was a diplomat, he had been Nigeria's ambassador to France and Monaco. Ambassador Akin Fayami, a pleasure to have you join us again today.
Thank you very much.
All right, and then we also have with us here in the studios Dr. Hussein Abdul, who is Country Director, Plan International, Nigeria. Dr. Abdul, a pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Korean?
Yeah, and also with us this morning is Dr. Jidofo Adibe, Associate Professor, Nasarawa State University, Kefi, also a columnist of the Daily Trust. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria, Professor.
Thank you.
All right, well, gentlemen, let's kick off the conversation. The issues are fairly well known, but in a matter of hours, as we indicated, around about 6 p.m. Nigerian time, which will be around noon on the Eastern time in the U.S., Eastern Standard Time of the U.S., Mr. Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 45th president of the United States. He's said a lot during the campaign. He's also said a lot after he was elected. He's been profiled, and there's a great deal of interest in his presidency, which is kicking off today. From the diplomatic perspective, what does a Trump presidency portend? Ambassador Akin Fayami.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. First of all, I think we are in for a very unconventional presidency, a very unpredictable one for that matter. Right from the word go, Mr. Trump has shown that you can't really pin him down on any issue for that matter. During the campaign, you have already said it. Your commentary also has mentioned that. You can see that a lot of flip-flops are going to be in there. Campaign rhetorics are something else, and then governance is entirely different. So it's still early days, but definitely it's going to be characterized by the unknown. There's going to be a lot of paradigm shifts from what we've been used to in the international world order.
How would diplomats most likely respond to this? I mean, if you say it's going to be unconventional, it's going to be unpredictable, what does that mean for a diplomat, who is having to, manage relations with the U.S.?
It means that it's not what you see that you get, if I can use that cliche. Mr. Trump is not your usual administrator. He's never held any public office. We all know that, not even councillor, not House of Rep, not senatorial, not governorship, nothing. He's been a businessman. So he's going to come to the presidency with a business-like approach. And that means you protect your own interest. Business is not diplomacy. So as a diplomat, the rest of the world is just going to watch and see how it's going to pan out, because you cannot treat Mr. Trump as you've done with other presidents or leaders. You already know where they are coming from. But as far as this presidency is, you don't really know what you are going to get on various issues. It's going to develop, and people are going to react to it as it develops.
Ambassador, America is traditionally known to be a big democracy, and they have fashioned out policies that could be said to be not partisan, Right, and if he gets there, or well, he has gotten there already. Now, considering what America is in terms of leadership of the world, you know, as they are, does it mean that Trump cannot be curtailed based on some diplomatic issues that concern America that never changed, irrespective of which party in power? Now, he has his rhetoric, he has his, like you said, unconventional, but does it mean that he cannot be, you know, tamed, you know, because of course he has employed some men with experience, like his vice president, he's an experienced person, he's the former governor of Indiana. Now, how can Trump be managed, knowing his background as a businessman?
Well, you know, as the president is the most powerful man, the buck stops on his table, even though you can have all your aides and assistants that can want to, in quotes, tame, you know, but, you know, it's what he wants that is going to fashion out. I mean, the policy America has been using is going to reflect on the personality of the president, irrespective of whether it is bipartisan or not. You know, now he controls the Senate, controls the House of Rep, so he's going to have a lot to say. You know, it's, yes, I won't use the word tame, but of course he's going to have people trying to pull him back. They've been doing that. The vice president, you said, Pence, he's been trying to do some damage control after Mr. Trump talks, and then he comes back later to say, no, no, we mean this way, we mean that way. So that shows you what you are saying. That's going to be how it's going to be. But Mr. Trump is the president. The president of the United States is the most powerful person on earth. So his personality is going to affect so many things. I'm sure we are still going to get to that in the course of this discussion. But trust me, you know, he's going to want to get his way in most ways, having been a businessman.
Well, Ambassador Akinfayemi, thank you very much. Let's now bring in Dr. Jide Ofadibe into the conversation. Taking off from the point just articulated by Ambassador Akinfayemi, is the world likely to witness an overwhelmingly powerful U.S. president? Well, he's coming to office, even though he lost the popular vote by almost 3 million to Hillary Clinton. But he has, his party, that's to say the Republican Party, has control of Congress, the House of Reps, as well as the Senate, plus the powers that the presidency, you know, wields, you know, as a control of the executive branch of government.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me just say that we still don't know what we'll get from Donald Trump. Mario Cuomo, the late former governor of New York State, once said, you know, you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose, which means all your sound bites during campaigning still has to be broken down when you want to turn them into policies and programs. You still have to justify where the money will come from, and in many cases it still has to go through congressional authorization, which means that you can say, for example, we are going to build a wall across Mexico, and Mexican government will pay. When it comes to the reality, when it comes to the chips are down, we'll know if you can do it or not. It's just like boxers, you know, before a bout, they do what they call trash talk. They tell you, I'll knock you out in round 1 and all this. It's only when they punch, the first punch lands on your chin, that you face a reality check. So we have to at least give Donald Trump the first 2 months, and then a pattern will emerge. And I believe even in a spider's web, there will be a pattern. He's not likely to be as powerful as, you know, we all are fearing him to be. Because first now you will see if what is emerging now with his talks, I don't want to use garbage talks, he's already facing enormous domestic pressure. There are still people who consider him as illegitimate amidst suspicions that Putin or Russia may have had a hand in his emergence. And then he's already picking on Europe. You know, he was going to curtail NATO, he was going to, forgetting that even America benefits from his NATO engagement. And then also he's ramping up on two-China rhetoric. And don't forget, China is the single largest holder of American debt. So you're taking on China, you're taking on Europe, you have domestic pressure. All these pressures will help to define you. And when they define you, people will have a room on where to, you know, start engaging you. And don't forget, if you don't want to do a deal in this modern world, you're a big country, and there are several now big economic powers. Even China is also gradually becoming a strong military power. So already U.S. is only our number 3 trading partner behind China and European Union. So if you move away, other powers will move in to take your position. It's not going to be a catastrophe in my position.
From the campaigns, Trump has been consistent. Even after he has been elected, he has been consistent on those issues that you've mentioned, that he was going to do all that. Now, let's go to some specifics, like Obamacare, which he promised to repeal. Of course, the process has begun already, even when they don't have any replacement yet, and he's working on that. So the issue of immigration, too, that he was going to ship out millions of the people he described as criminal and illegal aliens, in America, which of course many of us believe may affect Africa, Now, are you saying that being the most powerful and having the 2 chambers of the Congress, in his kitty, don't you think that he might like to push all some of his rhetorics into reality?
Now, let me pick on Obamacare that you mentioned. The premise of the Obamacare was to give affordable care to every American. And they are in trying to find a replacement for Obamacare, he's just said, I am guaranteeing you people that every American will have, will get a coverage, will get insurance, health insurance, which is again coming back to the fundamental principle of Obamacare. So as they try to tinker with the Obamacare itself, they will only come with a version of Obamacare, going by what he said. And that's going to apply across board to all the things he said. You are not going to overnight and round up all the immigrants. It's so difficult to do. So essentially, you still have to come back to legislation. You need congressional authorization. You need other people to back you up. So sound bites, campaigns are sound bites. That's why they call them poetry, a campaign in sound bites. But when it comes to actual governance, in fact, initially they said the first thing they would do was to repeal Obamacare. And then they turned around and say, okay, there may be some things good about Obamacare that we need to keep. And then it came down to another principle. I want to make sure that every American has a medical insurance coverage, which is, again, coming back to the premise of the Obamacare.
All right, Dr. Adibe, thank you very much. Now, let's also get the views of Dr. Hussein Abu. Dr. Hussein Abu, ultimately, political commentators would say that the American electoral system made it possible for Mr. Trump to emerge as president. In that sense, it could also be said that the American voters asked for it, and this is what they got. Now, but what ultimately, we cannot begin to look into the crystal ball now. Perhaps the first 100 days of Mr. Donald Trump will probably begin to crystallize where his presidency is headed. But from your perspective, what does a Trump presidency portend for Americans themselves and the rest of the world?
Well, I actually think that maybe the world needed a Trump to actually shape up to certain realities that we have for a long time not been very comfortable with. And sometimes a system has a way of producing its own antithesis. When you have a prevailing situation, and that situation is not sustainable over a long period of time, then the system generates its own negativity and then produce something very different. And I think that is where the unconventionality of Trump's elections and possibly his leadership will actually lie. One, America, historically, there have been, in the last 2-3 decades, a whole lot of conversation around the level of inequality in America, particularly economic inequality. The succeeding government have not been able to responsibly respond to. The recession have been deeply associated with that. There's a race question, which a lot unfortunately thought that Obama's elections will be able to sufficiently address, which hasn't come. We have seen an escalation of crime and an increasing disenchantment of an average category, a particular category of American that also happens to have the bulk of the vote. And Trump wiped off those sentiments, and he did them brilliantly well, using his own background as a media person and also as a celebrity convener He did that eloquently well. And despite the enormity, the negativity of the conventional media that he experienced, he was able to use an alternative media to actually galvanize a particular category of people. Of course, he didn't win the majority vote, but the American system provides an opportunity because you still have to go through the electoral college, and eventually he got elected. It's like us in Nigeria talking about a president actually winning a 2/3 of the states of the federation. But now, what is important for the country and for the world? I think colleagues on the other side have elaborated on some of those things. The reality is, I don't actually think that it is going to be bad as people are actually portraying, but he's going to ask some fundamental questions that is only people from the other side that used to ask those questions. For instance, his question on NATO was a very, very fundamental one. This is a question that wouldn't have ever have come from a leading NATO country. It would have ordinarily have come from people, even within the NATO countries, who are on the other side of the conversation. But he's saying NATO is obsolete. It's a hard fact that NATO is actually built on the image of the Cold War. And NATO has not changed fundamentally since the so-called end of the Cold War. So if a Trump is asking that question, for me, it's an issue that you have to do another conversation in NATO. You may not scrap NATO, it may not end, warmongering may not end fundamentally, but something somehow may be done. It may even escalate. Second, he's asking a big question about the UN. This is the question that people have been asking. People have been talking about democratizing the UN. I am not saying he's going to support that, but it's going to create room for conversation on the UN system. He's moving America back to its post-Second World War history, which is about its isolationist disposition, which is around think internally, act internally. You don't have to bother yourself so much about what is happening around the world. Whether he understands the implication of that for Americans' global influence and its economy is not too clear, because sometimes I feel there's an element of naivety or an outright ignorance of emerging trends in global history. So for me, again, I think Trump is also a big shocker for America to also begin to appreciate the reality, because I also believe that there's an element of false consciousness and an element of over-exaggerations of the power, influence of America, that Trump thinks that by the press of button he can change everything around the world. I think it is also going to show the Americans also the reality that the world is not, we are not in the 1960s, we are not in the 1970s, that the world has moved on. Fundamentally, there has been a massive fundamental shift in locus of power around the world. There is not, yes, we don't have a bipolar system, but power has become multipolar. There are different locations of power across the world. Every country, or some countries, have begun to develop their own constituents of fiefdom, let me just use that, but very loosely, of power. So you cannot just come and think that everything can be dictated. My very good friend Julia had alluded to that, for instance. If you go to Europe, the locations of powers is shifting, is changing. Germany's influence is growing tremendously. The alliances, the traditional alliance with France is building strongly. China is becoming a major, not just an Asian player, but a major player in the world. It is not simply a Russian issue. In Africa, there's an increasing awareness of also the need to assert. The Arab world is in crisis, naturally it's in crisis, but the dynamics of the crisis in the Arab world has become a major shaper of world event. And that is why the bulk of Trump's campaign is not only simply talking about Mexico, but it's also talking about the Arab world. That's the emphasis. You didn't hear anything, and nothing actually came up from Trump rhetorics on Africa. Fundamental, absolutely nothing actually came out on Africa. And that is where he's going to be making a huge mistake.
Dr. Abdul, I picked one word from all you've submitted this morning, some level of naivety that maybe there. Now, Donald Trump's provocative style, if I may use that word, he will be inaugurated as the most controversial American president because he has touched all aspects of, American policy, foreign policy, for instance. Now, he told the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee that his number one priority would be to dismantle the deal with Iran. Now, if he takes such action, and there are similar deals like that have made America what America is in terms of being in control, or rather policing the world, if you like. Now, won't this fight Trump back? Because from what is going on now, he intends to change the world. And from what you have submitted, it does seem that he may have the powers to do that. But there are other indices which may indicate that, look, it will be difficult for him to. He's against the UN. He has spoken against the UN, the NATO you talked about, which America benefits from. And there's a reason why America is actually funding NATO to the extent they are doing at the moment. Then if Mr. Trump turns all these, against America, he has spoken against major car manufacturers in the world, threatening to raise their tariff to 35% if they don't manufacture in America. But has he also forgotten that America also, manufactures in other countries, So now, how do you reconcile some of these utterances of Mr. Trump and as we move forward towards his presidency?
I agree with my very good friend Judy that he may not end up being as powerful as people actually think. He's been a businessman all through, and if you know America very well, when you go there, the conversation is always about deals. So he's been a deal maker, and so he thinks that he's a powerful negotiator. He doesn't know that at the level of the presidency, he's not actually going to be the one to lead that negotiation. And making deals, which is for profit, is completely different. Like the first person actually did mention, it's a completely different ball game from politics. I don't actually think that he may actually get his way through in practically everything. Yes, his party is the dominant in the Congress, but the reality is that Trump is not a party man. And because he's not a party man, the party people also know his position on issues and they have their discomfort with them. So it is not everything that Trump proposes that will scale through with the Republicans, because he is not a Republican. He is a Republican president. Two fundamental different things. He got his way, like joke, he got a ticket, and today he was going to be a Republican president. But he is not. In terms of the Republican values, the Republican principles, the Republican politics, he is not there. He doesn't fall into the traditional conception of a Republican politician. Therefore, his proposals will be badly tinkered before they actually scale through. They will be badly tinkered before they scale through. Look, sometimes he may even sound in some of his proposals more liberal than some Republican, but in many occasions, he will be much more hyped up than many of those things. Then the other one is these contradictory dispositions. And that is why I kept referring to naivety or ignorance outrightly, is the fact that, look, you want to engage NATO, you think NATO is not why, you think they have to pick their bills, that is fine, you think that it is obsolete, but you want to renegotiate an existing, already a standing deal that this particular institution was involved in the conversations. The Iran deal is not an American deal. America could decide to actually pull out. But American sanction is not enough to cripple Iran. It's not enough to it. And listen to the Iranians and what has been coming from them for the past 3 days. You just know that we are just in for a rough ride if actually Trump's try to pick up on that.
All right, Dr. Hussein Abdul, thank you very much again. We'll return to you in the course of this conversation. Now, just before we begin to narrow it down to Africa and ultimately Nigeria, Ambassador Akinfam, based on your familiarity with Europe, what, in your opinion, is likely to be the European temperament in dealing with Trump? There are telltale signs already. France, just a couple of days ago, said, listen, they would not need the U.S. to dictate to them in terms of the two-state solution that they have proposed with regard to Palestine. And Germany is also, making some remarks, rebuff, apparently, to what Mr. Trump has said, and these are the two most significant players in Europe. From your perspective, how is Europe likely to react, and how might we begin to observe their reactions and then get more friendly with them?
Thank you. You've hit the nail on the head, so to say. You can see straight away that he's not having an easy ride with Europe, even right from his campaign. In fact, he was called all sorts of names by the French president, the British, and all that. Now he's president. How will he relate with them? He didn't start off on a very good footing. You can see that even in his press conference, he was talking about Angela Merkel, giving her respect as the leader of Europe, in quote. Germany is more, like you said, the most powerful nation there. But he's saying that she made a catastrophic decision on immigration. That obviously will rankle Merkel, if you are Merkel yourself. Now, what do you mean? This is a well thought out policy. You sit down there in America, you're telling us that our immigration policy in Europe is a disaster. Yeah, obviously, you are not starting off on a good footing. In fact, Mr. Hollande of France has already taken him up on that Trump doesn't know what he's talking about, that he wishes he were in Europe to come and see all the refugee problems that they're having, why they had to take in refugees here and there. So, in short, he's on a collision course with Europe, the way I see it. And that NATO is part of it, which has been well analyzed. Immigration policy, they are totally on opposite sides. And that obviously means that we down south here in Africa, if that kind of rancor can be with Europe, then what happens to Africa? In fact, we are not even on the radar of Mr. Trump. That is Africa itself. We are not on the radar at all. In terms of priority, Africa has slid down totally to the end of the poll.
I'm wondering, but is this any surprising? Republican presidents have often tended to deal with Africa at arm's length.
Yes, but you can see what Dr. Abdul says. He's not a Republican, which I agree with very much. He's a president of the Republican Party, but he's not the typical Republican politician. Whether they deal with Africa in a arm's length or not, it's not the issue. We are talking of Trump presidency. He's going to call the shots. Don't forget that President Bush was a Republican, but he had good relationship with Africa here. He was even invited to the African Union Summit as a guest speaker. They don't do that in the AU. I was part of that system for a while, unless you are considered a friend. So even being a Republican president does not make him to ostracize Africa. It also depends on his personality. That is where Donald Trump's personality will come into play, irrespective of bipartisanship or not.
Donald Trump has actually made some derogatory statements against the Africans and Arabians as well. So this is a man that, as Tutadibe said, his rhetoric, during campaign still persists. He has insisted on that. And what Kingsley, to me, wanted to know is how can we manage this man? How can we work with him as Africa as a continent? How can we manage his chemistry to see how we can blend into whatever thing he wants to offer to the continent? Because he has already considered the continent as people who are lazy, who are there's nothing good about us. He's also made such comments against Africans living in America, especially those whom he considered as illegal aliens, whom he also considers as criminals. So is that going to be a meeting point, a point where we can now have a leeway to see how Nigeria can also continue to benefit from America?
Well, in fact, I will say that his attitude towards Africa, it's actually good for us. It gives us the opportunity to look inwards, to do things ourselves. We don't need to depend on America. We are, like Dr. Abdul also said, the power shifts from time to time, from here to there. America is not indispensable for the continent. We have other interests. Russia, China, the European Union. Then Africa itself. Why do we want to wait for Mr. Trump for us to benefit from him? If he's going to partner with us, good. But from what you yourself said, the rhetorics and all that, it's already apparent that, in fact, development aids are going to suffer you know, it's not going to, he doesn't care about Africa. All these aids that we are getting here and there is going to be slashed down. That means we have to look inwards. We have to do it ourselves. We have to go to new friends. You know, I think it will be beneficial for the continent.
Well, thanks a lot. Well, let's see, Dr. Wajide Ofadibe, once again. Can we begin to perhaps speculate as to how, you know, the world would look like if Mr. Trump were to proceed with his protectionism and isolationist policy? So listen, I'm a businessman, and this is, you know, I want to call deals and then be sure that America is run on a business model. Mm-hmm. There is already, you know, some conflict or some challenge with regard to NATO. If he gets his way with NATO, what will this mean for the balance of power as well as global peace? Not forgetting that the Warsaw Pact collapsed and most of the members came into NATO. And then you're having this rapprochement, is it, shall we say, between Putin, Russian president, and Trump.
Okay, before I answer that, let me just comment on a point you made, that Republicans traditionally don't think much about Africa. Let me just say, in what we call concentric circle theory, in terms of importance of things to nations, whether Republican or Democrats, Africa is of peripheral interest, irrespective of whoever is there. And if I pick on the last 3 presidents of U.S., you know, we have, it took Bill Clinton, who was marketed as first African-American president before Obama. It took him 7 years after being in Africa, in office, to formulate any African initiative. And that happened in 2000 with AGOA. He came to office in 1993. If you get back to our brother or cousin, quote-unquote, Obama, it took him 5 years of being in office before he formulated any major initiative on Africa, and that was the Power Africa initiative, which came in 2013. And the contra George Bush that you mentioned, when he came to office, he was about the quickest. He formulated the AGOA in 2003, 3 years after coming to office. In terms of the impact of those initiatives, comparing Democrats and Republicans, you find out that whereas the AGOA benefited some countries, under AGOA you can export to America if you meet the safety standards without paying any value-added tax, which means you could save between 16 and 25%. That helped some countries like South Africa was able, up to between that period and 2014, to export values worth 1.2 billion, Lesotho, Malawi, others. Nigeria benefited less outside crude. We had like 2.6 million between that period and 2.6, which because we have a lot of things to do. Now, if you get to PEPFAR, you mentioned he was invited, Bush was. The reason is before Bush came to power, Africans in several HIV-hit countries were dying like chickens. Less than 50,000 had access to vital antiretroviral drugs. So Bush came with this massive PEPFAR, which voted 15 billion, the highest single health initiative by any country in the world. Voted 15 billion, and suddenly HIV and AIDS became just conditions to be managed, no longer guaranteed death sentences.
Yes.
So he's respected for that. Now, turn to our cousin, Obama, quote unquote. The Power Initiative, Power Africa was supposed to guarantee 30,000 megawatts from 2000 over a 5-year period to 60 million households. By the time he will be leaving office, it has delivered less than 400 million. And even then, the bulk of the funding, if coerced, made sure that it was coming from African Development Bank, countries that were to be benefited, and then with minor U.S. involvement.
Yeah,
and I'm coming.
I'm just wondering, but I mean, just hold on. I understand your analysis, but you also have to match that against the background of the state of the American economy. When Obama, this is not an apology for him, at the time he took over as U.S. president in his first time, the American economy...
And so did it was also the same economic problem when Bill Clinton was there. Remember, it was bad economy.
But
I'm not trying to defend. I'm only trying to say that we have this mindset of identity politics, that because Republicans are not our friends, they are not friendly to Africa, in theory they are not expected just like what we have in our identity politics. The underlying assumptions in identity politics, when you interrogate them empirically, they don't stand a test of. What I'm trying to say is that, okay, it doesn't really matter. A Republican will have benefited. There's a room for benefit of doubt. Coming to the second, your main question, what
NATO,
what is likely? As my one of the things my friend Abdul was, we were in a conference together a few days ago, and one of the things we sat together discussing was whether this man really understood the nature of military-industrial complex. That's actually Abdul's word, because it's so intricate, and I don't think he's likely to get his way. In fact, as a matter of fact, years ago, people were doing scenario mapping on a possible decline of America. And one of the most profound writers there said, American decline will be guaranteed. The question the world should worry about will be, how will America respond to its decline? Now, I started reading now about possible Donald Trump, if he succeeds with isolationism, becoming now triggering that American decline people are talking about. Remember, this is now a very complex world. What Abdul said, before the Second World War, America could afford to be isolationist because the world at that time was as less linked intrinsically as it is today. So if you decide to isolate yourself and every other country, they will be happy. In fact, if you isolate yourself, whether you are making or to make it, others will be glad to move in. And that will actually accelerate America's decline.
Okay. All right, let's thank. We're not cutting it short, but we are working on time. Thank you very much for that analysis. Now let's go back to Dr. Abdu. Dr. Abdu, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is NATO, which we discussed a short while ago, was formed in 1949, and it has an aim. It is to safeguard the freedom and, of course, the security of its members through political and military means. Now, if Trump pushes the review of NATO further, how will it affect America's leadership of that organization? And, of course, how does it affect the entire world?
Actually, when it comes to international organization, there's Robert Michel has this saying, and that he who says organization says oligarchy. So once you say you have an organization, as much as even democratic you try to pretend about it, you're actually saying a few controls it. So if you talk about ECOWAS in West Africa, you will definitely see in Nigeria, because Nigeria is the most powerful country within the sub-region. If you talk about AU, you will see Nigeria, you will see South Africa. If you talk about NATO, that is how it was configured. Note that NATO was configured post-Second World War, a war that America emerged as the savior of a major European war. And because, there are contention, there are histories around whether the war was actually a world war, whether it wasn't just a European war. So America came as a savior, and then American influence, its size, its economic size, its military size, suddenly become, transparent, become very open. The world began to know it because it was an isolated country at a particular time. And so when NATO emerged, America was naturally the leader because, one, Europe, the post-war economic situation was terrible. It was a big issue in Europe. Germany, that happens to be the biggest country, was a defeated country. And so its levels of engagement would naturally be weak. America already has a historical relationship with Canada, with Britain, and other European countries because of the history of the U.S. Itself. So it became a natural leader, and it has become also the source of American influence in international politics. It was a major source of American influence in international politics because it could easily railroad all the NATO countries to do its bidding. And talk about, let me just give you two very important instances post-Second World War, the most recent one, the first Gulf War and the role of NATO, the second one and the role of NATO, the invasion of Libya and the role of NATO. All those things were purely American interests that the NATO was actually mobilized to support that process. So if America does not have a NATO,
You cannot be isolationist and still be unilateral in international politics. It's impossible because you need other countries. So if you go into isolationism, you cannot take a unilateral action because you wouldn't get the required support to actually be able to do that kind of unilateralism. So I think that this guy doesn't just understand international politics. And that's my worry.
Yeah, well, Dr. Abdul, well, we will watch out, as we said. I'm sure the world will watch out for his first 100 days to see how his policies unfold. After the first 100 days, it'll be his first year in office. And after that, midterm, and then, you know, you have oftentimes repercussions during the midterm of any presidency. Just to indicate that we have reactions by way of tweets from our viewers who have taken advantage of the Twitter handle at NTA GMN. We'll take some of those tweets now and then continue with the conversation. Suleiman Sanusi has this tweet. None of the U.S. policies or moves whatsoever will either favor Nigeria in particular or Africa at large.
Now, we have this from Sani Michael, or Marco G. He says, before his election, Trump made it clear that he is not at home with immigrants in the U.S. Africans should start coming home.
Well, Sonny again tweet said that America has stopped buying Nigeria's oil is not going to be a major disappointment to Nigeria. Trump is going to worsen the situation.
And more from him. Trump is a racist. He is going to introduce anti-world policies to further show his racial discrimination. Nigeria should get ready for it.
Festus Akimboyewa has this tweet. Donald Trump ran a campaign that divided America and confused the world. No one knows what to expect in the days ahead, not even himself.
and finally, from Jacobs Ogaga Fego, if Trump does what he said throughout his campaign, then our best brains will come home to make Nigeria great again.
All right.
Well, I like that.
Yeah, well, those are some of the reactions that we're getting from our viewers via tweet. But just before we let Dr. Hussein Abdul go, in terms of U.S.-Nigeria relations, Nigerians often tend to have a sentimental reaction towards the U.S., you know, for good or for ill, you know, we absorb whatever appears to come out of the U.S. What, in your opinion, again, we're trying to stargaze, what, in your opinion, you know, would be Nigeria's response to a belligerent or unfavorable U.S. policy or a basket of policies under Trump?
I think historically, Nigeria has a very friendly relationship with the United States, and it's very, very historical. And some of them have social, cultural. America has a very huge African-American population. Nigeria is the biggest black country in the world. There is also a relationship of big countries. Nigeria is Africa's biggest country. America is a very huge country. Then there's also the character of the economy in Nigeria. America is a very big consumer of energy, hydrocarbon, and then Nigeria is a big producer of it, even though those have actually continued to change over the years. But you cannot look at American relationship with Nigeria in isolation from generally with Africa. I think the policies, in policy-wise, it's not that the policies have always been very favorable to Nigeria or Africa in that sense. I think what America has done so much for Africa is the whole thing about is on development aid. I work for an aid agency, and I know today America is still the biggest in terms of development financing in Africa. And Jide eloquently, and I'm happy Jide you did that very well, on Bush's government and the HIV/AIDS in Africa. The progress that we have made today on HIV/AIDS actually has to do with the kind of interventions that we got from the United States of America. So in terms of aid, it's still the biggest. Even the EU hasn't been putting enough of that. But in terms of trade, which is the most sustainable and the most developmental one, it's not there. It's just not there. It is only America that needs a policy for it to trade with Africa. You need an AGOA to facilitate trade with Africa. So it's just not there. What about Europe? Yes, Europe, if you take about Europe and you to look at the EU,
from the Cotonou Agreement and all the related EDF that actually have in mind, and all the negotiations and economic partnership agreement that most Africans considered unfavorable to them, that have gone through negotiations. Americans' policy is never negotiated. You just make AGOA, it was not negotiated with Africans. They just made the policy. And they say, oh, we're just going to help you how you can access our market. That is not how trade is done. I think and that's why when I say that, look, Trump is a trend. Trump is not an individual. The Trumpism, that to Donald Trump is an individual, but Trumpism, which is around his thinking, his beliefs, is a trend. Because it's very unilateral. AGOA was very unilateral thing. Somebody just fed and said, this is how we can help Africa to access our market. So American is not doing enough in terms of doing business with Africa, but is doing a lot in terms of supporting and financing development in Africa. And I think this is a balance that Africa needs. This is a balance that Nigeria needs, that we need to engage America and actually have a clear common understanding on trade and businesses, and see how Nigeria can better access American market, not necessarily in this we are helping them pattern. We need the development assistance, and if you know, Nigeria is not a major aid destination. It's still less than 2% of our gross national income. It is the least that you can actually have in the whole of Africa. It's not a major aid destination. So therefore, what we need to emphasize as a country is how we can do business with America. It's still a very important country, whether Trump or no Trump, and we believe that Trump, we have no reason not to do business with us, despite our diminishing influence in international politics. But any American country, if you want to do business, you want to relate with Africa, you still have to do it with Nigeria. If you don't do it because of the size of Nigeria, you have to do it as it is because of ECOWAS, which is one of the most active regional blocks that you have in Africa.
All right, Dr. Hussein Abdul, Country Director of Plan International Nigeria, would like to thank you for your insights in our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. We still have with us here Dr. Jideofor Adibe and Ambassador Akim Fayomi to continue the conversation.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
As I dey recharge so, I know say I must win the Airtel Red Hot promo. Hey, by the time the 10 million naira enter my hand, I go just give my landlord quick notice. Yes, and if him prove stubbornness, I go just buy a house, buy am family join self. Airtel Red Hot promo, na im sure pass.
Promo runs till end of January 2017. Airtel, the smartphone network.
NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, a subsidiary of the Nigerian Television Authority, specializes in creating comfort in all areas of life, such as real estate investments, that is, land, houses, and office spaces, mass leasing, savings and loan scheme, household items and car loans, and so much more. Other information and entertainment services include Property in Style, a TV program that airs on the network service of the NTA, and also Property Connect, a nationwide magazine. Our priority is to bridge poverty gaps and sustain quality welfare of our clients. Partner with us and watch us help you grow. Pay us a visit today at the NTA headquarters permanent site, Area 11 Garki, Abuja, or our Lagos office at number 15 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. For more information, visit our website on www.ntaproperties.com.ng, or you can email us on ntap2000@yahoo.com. Call us on 080-2316-3474 or 080-6939-5185 or 070-3189-0555. NTA Properties Investment Company Limited. The much needed help at your doorstep.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. Just to indicate that we have another set of tweets which we are taking right away before we introduce another guest who is joining the conversation. Chris Owungamba has this tweet: Trump's emergence placed side by side with Brexit taught me one lesson. Namely, the paradigm has shifted or is changing again. That's a new order.
Now, this from Ortega. The truth about Donald Trump is that he is not a buyout man. Africa should do more to help Africans instead of waiting for miracles.
And then we have this from Ifiok Jonathan. It tweets. It says, Trump will fight terrorism and will unite with African leaders.
Now, also from Ifiok, Donald Trump's presidency comes at the right time. This man is ordained by God to restore sanity and pride of Christians.
And, Ifiok Jonathan again from this, it tweets, I believe Trump would return the loot recovery. That's recovery is return. So I believe Trump will return the loot to Nigeria and fight corruption in Nigeria and the world to zero. Yeah, those are the tweets that we have in the meantime from our viewers. Kirian, we have another guest.
Yes, we have another guest who just joined us. He is Abdullahi Alaji Dauda, Vice President, Corporate Services, Platinum Vault Group. He spent 32 years with the United Parcel Service as project manager in the United States. Alaji Dauda, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
And let's quickly have your view. We are talking about the man Trump, a businessman to the core, who is going to be inaugurated today as the 45th president of the United States of America. We all know his rhetoric. We all know all he has said. We all know his stand on so many issues, both locally and internationally. Now, what's your assessment of this man in question? Or how do you foresee, as Kingsley will always make reference to, his first 100 days in office?
Yeah, I think a lot have been said in the earlier segments about Trump. In my view is there is a campaign, there is a election, and then there is a governance. So now Trump is on the governance side. So as Obama has spoken in some of his press conferences, he has advised him, he's giving him some point. So my view is to wait and see what he's going to do, because no one knows what he's going to do, because he's been going off script so far in everything that have been happening since the election. So it's a wait and see. There are a lot of controversial statements that have been made either by his cabinet that he selected or by him himself, and contradiction and the rest. So no one really can predict what is going to happen. We can only assume that he's going to do the right thing. But again, with the American institution, there is a check and balance there. I'm sure with all the other houses, the House, Senate, and the Congress in the U.S., whatever he does, there's going to be some discussion. It's not going to be a dictatorship. So I'm sure once he gets into the seat, he will understand the reality and the enormity of the job that he's about to do.
Alaji Dauda, you've lived in America for 32 years, so you have wide experience about people of America. You are talking about a man who goes off script, as you rightly pointed out, flip-flops all the time. He says one thing today, tomorrow he says, look, this is what I meant. Such a personality being at the helm of affairs in America, how would an ordinary American look at the integrity of such a personality?
Well, it's scary to say, at least. But I think, as you rightly said, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt, and even if you don't like the guy or you didn't vote for him or the rest, you still have to give him that benefit. And also as a leader, you have to try at least to come to see how you can support him. And again, he's going to show his true color. He has already done, but that was during the campaign and during the political rallies and the rest. As I stated earlier, now it's time to govern. How is he going to govern when he gets into the White House? That's really going to be the...
All right, Abdullahi Dauda, thank you very much. We'll come back to you. Remember, we had you in the studios sometime last year when we were discussing the lead up to the U.S. presidential election and some of the views you expressed then. Of course, you've also re-articulated them in your contribution to our conversation this morning. Ambassador Akinfami, one of the points that, just to follow up on what Alhaji Dauda just said, one piece of advice that Obama said he gave to Donald Trump was to ask him to choose very carefully and wisely his set of advisors. Now, some Americans and counter-commentators have also expressed concern about his nominations for cabinet positions. There are complaints already of exclusion. The Latinos or the Hispanics believe that there's not one of them that is in his cabinet. And of course, you have mostly male members who are in the cabinet. One of them was accused of being a Klansman, that's to say, Ku Klux Klan. Plus the fact that some of his cabinet nominees are said to hold very extreme positions. Ultimately, even as a businessman, sitting atop the Trump business empire, what it means is that you rely on your lieutenants. What is the world likely to see with regard to either the temperament or the profiles of those whom Trump has already appointed as his inner team?
Yes, you made a very valid observation. The cabinet that we have seen so far, and I think he has picked virtually everybody, they are made up of mostly businessmen. I think he feels more comfortable in that circle of his as advisors. We only have a couple of retired generals, and he put them in the right places: defense and homeland security. But the rest are millionaires and billionaires just like himself. So we wonder what kind of advice are they going to give him when it comes to international relations, when it comes to diplomacy, when it comes to security. It's going to be a tough call. He's not listening to Obama, obviously, or else he will have peppered the cabinet with some technocrats. We don't have them. Like you are saying, forget the ethnic exclusion. No African American. Of course, Dr. Carson is there.
He's a Latino.
No Latino. Women are very, very few, less than before. So you wonder then that ultimately shows you that he's not really listening to anybody. He's just going it by himself, or else he should be taking advice from people like Obama. Obama came out to say that President Bush, who he took over from, lectured him, gave him advices, which he benefited from, even though they are from two different parties. But it's already coming to what we've been saying, that Mr. Trump is not prone to
unconventional.
Like I said, yes, extremely unconventional.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your contributions this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, let's shift our satellite on Gambia. Of course, it's the latest development in Africa politically today. The Adama Barrow was sworn in yesterday in the country's embassy in Senegal, but Jammeh still claims to be in power. I think we are having conflicting reports now about Jammeh. Some said his family has left, some said he's in hiding, and all of that. Now, Dr. Jidofo, what do you make of this scenario in Gambia? And of course, the actions taken by ECOWAS states?
Yeah, thank you. The first thing some people had tried to oppose the ECOWAS intervention by invoking the doctrine of non-interference in the internal affairs of independent states. And some of us also took the position that that doctrine has evolved, that we have moved from doctrine of non-interference to a doctrine of non-indifference. In other words, that what affects one country ultimately affects the rest in a highly globalized and networked world. Also, from about 2005 or so, the world started to talk about responsibility to protect. So I think that justifies it in a case where, for example, he lost the election, conceded, and then changed mind. And he has been in power since he was 29 years old. So the question now becomes, how do we free Gambians from this situation? So as we applaud the responsibility to intervene, responsibility to protect, that is, protect Gambians, their rights, we also have to be very mindful of another thing there, the conditions that give right to sit-tightism. And that is the notion of triumphalism by victors. In fact, for example, it was said that one of the reasons why Jammeh quickly reversed himself was the people started, supporters of Barrow started saying, we are going to probe him, we are going to examine his human rights records. From Mugabe to others, this idea of fear of persecution, fear of being, and we see it, some of us that actually have been opposed to the demonization of Jonathan, we don't do it because we feel he's a saint, but we're taking a bigger picture of consolidation of democracy. That if you're able, other countries, you're able to hand over power and return respect, that does not necessarily mean you will not be called to account for your tenure. Okay. I think Obasanjo did with Abdul Salam, but we have to be conscious how we treat leaders, especially those who voluntarily hand over power, so that a good president will be set and people do not regret ever handing over power.
All right, Dr. Adibe, thank you very much. Back to Ambassador Akinfayome. This is what has happened. It's a topic that we actually discussed extensively on our program yesterday. We're speculating, nobody was sure where the swearing was going to take place. Earlier, Barrow said will be sworn in on Gambian soil. We have Senegalese troops, who have their boots on the ground, who have moved in. The Nigerian Navy and Air Force are also providing cover for the Senegalese troops. Apparently, Yahya Jammeh is hemmed in. We have a new president of the Gambia, recognized now by the UN and by other entities. What does this mean for diplomatic relations on the one hand, and then getting Yahya Jammeh to creating a safe corridor for him, or lest he faces the consequences?
Yes, I mean, it's a very awkward situation having two presidents on both divides. Of course, the international community, including Nigeria, has recognized President Barrow, and rightfully too, because he won the elections. Jammeh, being stubborn, unfortunately, he might end up the way of previous sit-tight African leaders that have to be taken out by force. I understand that they've given him up to 12 o'clock this afternoon. President Condé of Guinea, Conakry, is going there this morning to try to mediate very last one now. Mauritania president was there yesterday, also trying to see how he can. So the last opportunity for him now is up till 12 o'clock this afternoon. If he doesn't, then he has to be flushed out. That's why Senegalese troops are there. Nigerians are backing them. Ghana is also sending troops. Obviously, he's in for a rough landing, so to say.
So we also is former President Yahya Jammeh.
Former. Right now, he's already former since yesterday.
All right, Alhaji Dauda, on Gambia, what is the best option at solving the impasse now? Because we've heard that the Gambian army did not put up any resistance when the Senegalese army was set to cross into the country. Does that mean they are no longer loyal to Jammeh?
Yeah, it's kind of an ironic situation what is happening in Gambia, because there is an election, there is a clear winner, and ultimately there should be a peaceful transition of power, but that didn't happen in this case. And the situation we're in now with Gambia, in Gambia with the Senegalese troop or the ECOWAS troop actually going in, and there is no resistance. So I think based on the last information that was given, that another president have gone in to see if he has a last-minute persuasion for him to surrender. The ECOWAS and the global community are doing the right thing in going in to make sure that they install or they put the right president in place to allow the winner of the election to come back into the country and govern. And also the international community now will stop at least dealing directly with the former president, as we coin it now. So it's not a good situation, and I know that since all the elections that have happened in the last 3 months in Africa also, whereby all transition were done peacefully, this one is now involving a military intervention, and the hope is that there is no bloodshed or something is peaceful, as being reported that if the resistance is not put in, then it will be a quick walkthrough to take the power back and give it to the rightful
All right, Alhaji Abdullahi Dauda, Vice President, Corporate Services of Platinum Vault Group, would like to thank you for being part of our program this morning. Of course, you've discussed the U.S. Situation. That's the impending inauguration of Donald Trump, as well as the updates on the Gambia. Thank you for being with us this morning.
You're welcome. All right, and I would also like to thank Ambassador Akin Fayomi, the former Nigerian ambassador to France and Monaco, for being part of the show this morning and making very valid contributions to our conversation this morning. Thank you very much, sir, for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Also, Dr. Jidofo Adibe, Associate Professor of the Nasarawa State University, Kefi, of course, a columnist on the Daily Trust. Thank you for being a guest on our show this morning.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Kinsley?
All right, just before we call it a day, we'll take this short break, and when we are back, we'll sign off for the day on the week.
As I dey recharge so, I know say I must win the Airtel Red Hot promo. Hey, by the time the 10 million naira enter my hand, I go just give my landlord quick notice. Yes, and if he prove stubbornness, I go just buy a house, buy a family, join self. Airtel Red Hot promo. I sure pass.
Promo runs till end of January 2017. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Introducing Chief Eric Omofia, President CEO of Erisco Foods Limited.
We are practical manufacturers, determined to say the truth in the best interest of our country. And the truth is that only Nigerians can make Nigeria great. I urge you to practicalize your love for this country. Buy made in Nigerian products from today and build a much brighter future for our country. You cannot continue to promote only other countries' economies, create jobs and wealth for them while denying yourself and children job opportunities and a good economy by not patronizing your own made in Nigerian products like Erisco, Rigico, and Nagico tomato paste and other range of Erisco foods products. Do the wise thing. Buy made in Nigeria today. You will never regret it. Let us all contribute to develop Nigeria's economy and support President Buhari's economic policy so that Nigeria can be sweet for all of us. Thank you and God bless you.
Buy your own products. Buy made in Nigeria like Erisco, Richico, and Nagico range of products. Proudly made in Nigeria by Erisco Foods Limited, a member of Erisco Bumpet Group.
Only you blind, you deaf, dumb, you even mental.
Brother mi, má dá lóhùn. Olórí burúkú ló pọ̀jù nínú wọn. Oh, brother, you go slap me now. Expect the cops, though. Oh, now one.
See fine girl.
Oh, brother, me.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Yomi Fash Lanso, Stephen Odingbe.
I just realized I ran out of fuel and I forgot my ATM and wallet at home. Sir, please, could you help me with anything?
Ego transporter and others ways. Are you going to Igwenga? Sir. Mon Dieu.
Hey, you have eyes to look at Kebe, Abi. So shall it be permanent in your life.
Professor John Bull, this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times.
I have catch a big liar in our family.
And who could that be?
Is she a baby papa? Abi is he a baby mama? Abi a baby what?
Over and out.
Welcome to the new speed of life.
Now, time for weather. The weatherman is standing by as we join the Nigeria Meteorological Agency for the weather outlook for the rest of the day.
It's now official. 2016 is the hottest year globally since instrumental record, toppling 2015. And these 2 years were more than 1.5 degrees Celsius higher than pre-industrial levels. 2016 also set a record for each month from January to December being hottest ever continentally. It was warmest only over North America and second warmest over Africa. El Nino, which is the main natural forcing function responsible for high temperatures, occurred only twice in the last 10 years. So what could be responsible for these high temperatures? Your guess is as good as mine. Anthropogenic factors. Friday should be fine weather-wise. Just sunny and hazy conditions to prevail over the north and central states. Some level of discomfort with increase in temperatures and relative humidities. Cloudiness should occur over the south with prospect of localized rain showers to affect the southeast coast later in the evening. Let's stand by for the temperature forecast.
And that's our package for today on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks for being part of it.
All right, and I'm Kingsley Osadola. My colleague Kerry Adamaya was with me on the program today. We thank you for being with us today. And indeed, for the week, we're wishing you a wonderful weekend. We hope to be back on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Have a nice day.